right. Well, welcome, Dylan, to Chatting It Up. We're so happy to have you chat with us today.
Thank you. Good to be here.
So we're going to jump right into today's chat, and I'm going to ask you, please tell us briefly of what happened with your son and the family this past summer.
Sure. So on July 19th, my son Sean, who was a freshman at the time going into his sophomore year, was asked by a friend of his to go meet him at Bates, and they were going to just do teenage stuff and hang out and probably get into trouble somehow, some way. But unfortunately, it was a turn of events, and this boy basically lured him into the woods behind Bates. And when Sean got back there, saw that there was 5 kids that he knew standing there, and Sean immediately knew what was going to happen, and he started to run away from them. 4 of the 5 proceeded to chase him down, tackle him, beat him up, punch him, kick him, spit on him, and then one of them urinated on him before Sean was able to get up and get away. Sean ran home. We're not too far from where Bates is, and he came into the house crying, cut up. He had cuts all over his body, his face, his arm, his legs and stuff. And he was just really out of it and hyperventilating. And he was able to eventually tell me what happened. And the first thing that he said, he wanted to get revenge. He wanted to go after these kids. And I, tried to reassure him that, he couldn't do that. It wouldn't be the wisest thing. And that we needed to report it to the police. And he said, I do not want to report this. And I get it. He, like a lot of kids, didn't want to be considered a rat. And, so he was adamant. He said, did not want me to report it, that it would just, kind of deal with it on its own. That said, Allison luckily was around the corner from us, and she was kind of on her way home. So she got home. I filled her in on what happened and explained to her. And I basically made an excuse to leave the house, and I went straight to the police department to report it. And it's a very long story, so I'll try to abbreviate it a bit. So the police wanted to get his story, and we had to try to convince Sean to speak to them. And anyway, he gave him his account of what happened, and the police pressed charges. Unbeknownst to Sean, he didn't want to press charges, but the police actually were the ones that pressed the charges on 4 out of the 6 children. 4 were originally charged with assault and battery and conspiracy to assault and battery. However, it got raised to assault and battery with a deadly weapon because they kicked him with a shoe on, which is considered a shod foot. So that's considered a dangerous weapon. So it went from a misdemeanor up to a felony. 4 of the kids, 2 out of the 4 were not coming back to Wellesley High. 1 moved out of town, the other one's going to a private school locally, and then 2 are coming back. So we went to the high school and basically said, what are you guys going to do about this? At first, they said they hadn't heard about it. And this is about a week and a half later, and I find that hard to believe that they hadn't heard about this. It's a small town. But they claimed that they didn't. They said they would do some investigating. We sat down with them, I don't know, 2 or 3 times, and they weren't very communicative. They kept telling us that they'll keep us in the loop. They were going to let us know. And it was always me calling Jamie Chisholm to get information out of them. In the meantime, I had also emailed David Lucier, and he said he hadn't heard about it, and that it was in the hands of the high school, and all that. So they ended up suspending one of the children for 10 and a half days, another one for 30, which we found was way too short. Sean was going through PTSD. He was in really bad shape. He was definitely depressed. He was scared. And we just felt that the time that these kids were suspended for was just way too short of a period for recovery. And other parents were concerned as well about these kids coming back. We pleaded with the school to extend it because in Massachusetts, the maximum for when there's a pending felony is 90 days, but they went with 10 and a half days and 30 days. We, as you are well aware, there was a rally held for Sean and for the cause of basically, letting the school know that we weren't satisfied with what their decision was. It was well attended. The media was there, as you know.
So that was on October 20th on Unity Day.
Yeah, that was on Unity Day, and the reason that it went wide, because it was kind of, I mean, people knew about it, but it wasn't really that well known. About a week before that, or maybe a week and a half before that, I had spoken at a school committee meeting, basically calling this administration out, and people caught wind of it because they were there, and it just got spread around, and then the media got a hold of it, and there was a story run in the Boston Globe as well as Channel 5, and then it kind of went from there.
Right.
So that's what happened. There's some ongoing stuff with we've met with the Assistant Attorney General twice. They are looking into, on our behalf for Sean's case, they are looking into what the school can do better for Sean. We're supposed to be getting a call from the school. We'll see if that happens, just to kind of figure out a plan. The Attorney General's office is looking into a potential systemic problem as well. That's a longer type situation, because I know there's been other parents that have complained about bullying in Wellesley as well.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where we stand now.
Right. And how safe do you feel, and how safe do you feel for Sean, and how safe does Sean feel going back to school and being in town?
Yeah, he feels much better now. He's getting his confidence back. The school has this bullying policy that's in place that was there. They didn't seem like they utilized it because it didn't seem like they even knew. I mean, they knew about it, but they didn't really know about it, from what I could tell. So I think that this is all reactionary, that the school has finally changed things around. I mean, it's good because moving forward, hopefully this type of stuff doesn't happen again. Mm-hmm. So I think Sean does feel, I don't want to say fully protected, but he feels like people are supporting him. Other children, some of the teachers around town, he feels fine. I mean, at first he didn't, he was worried that it would happen again, for sure, but the confidence is definitely coming back.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think that Sean also attended a Black Lives Matters rally.
He did, yeah. He and I went to the one in, I believe it was in Jamaica Plain.
Right.
And yeah, that was a good experience for both of us, because I'd never been to something like that either. So
yeah. And what made both of you decide to participate in that and support that cause?
Yeah, it was all Sean. He asked me, he said, "Dad, can we go to the rally?" And I wasn't sure at first, because I was a bit nervous for if there was any kind of violence that broke out, because we saw stuff happen in other places in the country. But I thought about it, and I thought it would be good for him and for me to go, and I'm glad that we did. And he's got a big heart, a huge heart, and he just felt bad for what happened to others. That we've seen.
Yeah, I think it definitely raises awareness in terms of, this was a very violent case, and there's all kinds of bullying behavior in so many levels and spectrum that happen daily. So definitely, I think it raises awareness.
Yeah.
And I mean, what is in your feeling, like, what do you think is the general culture of schools these days, not just our town, but in general, like, on these kinds of things?
Yeah. I feel like, Wellesley is certainly not in a bubble. This happens all over the place. And now that this is out, we hear more stories because people are talking about it. And obviously this is not just a Massachusetts thing, this is across the country, but I think bullying is a lot goes on that the adults just are not aware of. With social media, I mean, there's the cyberbullying. I mean, Sean did receive some pretty tough text messages that he should kill himself. And so like that stuff is going on. And unfortunately, a lot of kids are suppressing this and just are either don't want to talk about it or they're scared to talk about it. So I think it unfortunately, it happens a lot more than we know. And the sad thing is that, you know, what happened here, I don't want to say that kids now think that they can get away with it, but the consequences weren't all that bad for these children. And I don't know. I just don't think a very good example was set for this situation. You know, I mean, I guess they could have done a lot less also. You might take that argument, but I mean, obviously I'm on the other side of it that, you know, for what happened with Sean, it was not just bullying. I mean, this was a violent felony, and there should have been more consequences.
Right. Was there a lead up? So has this been sort of having like growing microaggressions through the years? Was there some way, you know, that, you know, if he had reported things earlier, do you think the school would have done anything different?
Yeah, that's a great question. And the short answer is yes, there was stuff leading up to it. Sean didn't report it, and you know, that's on him. I think he realizes that we became aware of something that happened to him about a month before this incident. Some of these same children bullied him again physically. And he had asked and pleaded and begged for us not to say or do anything. We at first wanted to call the parents, and he asked us not to. And this was during school. This was in either May or June of last school year. And I don't know what the school would have done. I hope they would have done something, but I don't know if they would have. It's hard to say because, you know, I hear stories about some of these other parents that have reported bullying, whether it's in the elementary school, middle school, or high school. And the responses have been really pathetic. I mean, where the school just says, oh, that doesn't count as bullying, or has to happen more times. I mean, I don't know. It's just, it's crazy the way some of these authority figures, respond to those.
Right. If you had your druthers to formulate the policy, how would you structure it? What would you do in order to? Would you have mandatory counseling for the students who perpetrated this, or how would you lay that out?
Mm-hmm. I would. First of all, I think the document should state what the consequences are. It's a bit vague, but I think that if students were to see it, to know like, oh, that's what would happen if I did something. I mean, whether that would make a difference or not, I just think that should be in there. Mm-hmm. I would also hand every child, I mean, I know we're kind of paperless these days, but hand them a copy of the bullying report in the beginning of the year and talk about it periodically throughout the year. I think in high school, they mentioned it like the first day or whatever when they're with their counselors, and that's kind of it. It's like, all right, it goes away. I think in the lower grades, they may talk about it a bit more, but I don't see why they wouldn't be doing that more in the high school as well. If I personally feel that the boys that weren't brought up on charges should have also had some kind of suspension as well, because they were there. They could have stopped it. They could have reported. There's a lot of things they could have done. Yes, they didn't get charged with anything from the police, but they were also there. I mean, one of those children is in Sean's class, which, I mean, Sean has to see this kid every day, and he was part of the scene. And I would have suspended the kids longer. I would have given them the maximum suspension.
Right. Was there any attempt at apology or communication between the students who were there in class now? No.
And I'm sure I know they all lawyered up. So I'm sure the lawyers told them not to. Mm-hmm. I mean, I'm guessing. Two of the parents did reach out to Allison via text to try to speak to her, and Allison didn't respond, but the children, no, they did not attempt to apologize.
Mm-hmm. Well, and so what are next steps going on from this? What are some of the things that you are planning to do or feel like you should be doing?
Well, for one thing, we're holding. We don't have a date yet, but I think it's sometime next week. We're trying to plan a candlelight vigil for anyone's invited to kind of support it, people that have been bullied, and just to support the protection and just the bullying policy. So once I get the date for that, I'll let you know. So that's something that's happening. There's this Attorney General's office back and forth that's going on. And as I'm sure you're well aware, I've been pushing hard to get David Lucier removed from his seat because, according to him, the decision was made by Jamie Chisholm. However, David Lucier is the top, and the way this entire thing was handled was horrific. There was no communication with us, with the town, the community, and I think he dropped the ball big time, and I've made that very clear. Unfortunately, the school committee is backing him, which is mind-blowing because over 1,000 people have signed this petition to remove David Lucier from his seat. But I think we definitely need change there for sure. And as I mentioned in the last school committee meeting, I mean, I'm not going to go away. I'm going to keep pushing. I don't know what else I can do right now. We have spoken to some lawyers. We haven't hired anyone, but one thing I'll do is continue to push to make sure the bullying policy is in place and that they're actually using it and going by what they should be doing. And hopefully this, it's a really unfortunate incident for us and Sean, but hopefully this has sparked something with the administration to do something about it.
Have you been given any indication that the bullying policy will be updated?
No indication. We did discuss it a couple of meetings ago at the school committee, and they basically just read from what's already there. I mean, I don't really know what the purpose of that was. It was written in 2010, updated in 2014, and hasn't been changed since then.
Right.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts you'd like to add, Dylan? Please go ahead.
I just think, if you're seeing this or reading about this, that if you have been bullied, talk to your parents, talk to your teachers, whoever you feel that you can trust, because we need more people to speak up about this, and you shouldn't feel guilty about it or worried about it or nervous about it, because anyone that is bullying, they need to be dealt with. And I think what Sean did was a very brave thing for him to do. So I'm very proud of him.
Right. And what would you say to students who feel in high school, they don't want to seem like the oddball out. They all want to conform and not be singled out. So what would you say to students who are afraid to report these things?
Yeah, great question. There is an anonymous way of reporting this. That's still unclear. I think the school needs to make it very clear to the students on how they do it. They mentioned you can do *86 or something like that. There's some code you can do on your phone where your phone doesn't get tracked, and you can place a call. Mm-hmm. But I don't think all the students know about that. So that's one way. They mentioned slipping a note underneath the door to a teacher. But then again, you might be nervous that somebody sees you do that, so it's hard. So yeah, that's a tough one.
Right. Well, thank you so much for this conversation.
Yeah, thank you.
And yes, please do be in touch.
I will. All right, great.
Follow up with you and chat more.
All right, sounds good. Thank you.